It's the Craggy Rugby Podcast. We're standing at the bus stop here in Pau as we wait for the bus to bring us to Biarritz. The Quick is closed. William is not impressed because he wants a coffee. We can't get one. You'll hear a lot of traffic as we go by, as the Uber came much quicker than we expected. But there you go. We've got a few minutes to kill, so we said we'd start the podcast here. But wow, last night was something else, and this morning sunshine is just as good, isn't it, Niall?
Well, I'm feeling very French. Apparently I was described as that ad nauseum yesterday. But the sun in the back is fabulous. Absolutely fabulous, yeah.
It is. How are you feeling today, William? That was an excellent result last night.
Yeah, it was good. It was great night. They needed it. The team needed it. The organisation, if you want to call it that, right from top to bottom, needed to turn in a performance, and they did. It was always going to be that type of game, I felt, and it, end to end, bit mad, all sorts of stuff going on, but they saw it out in the end, and they kept going, and they got the try right at the end to seal it. I think at that stage, Poe had lost heart a bit. Certainly, Dan Robson, the 9, when it was a knock on. There was about maybe 2.5, maybe 3 minutes to go, and he just booted the ball away. I think that's it. He was fed up. He knew that they were in trouble, and from that, Connacht went down the field and scored, and that you can do no more or less than that.
Yeah, not the sort of game you like to report on, Lindley, when you're in a hurry at the end of the game and there's so many scores and so many substitutions. And, we sat there for quite a while last night, making sure we got it all right. But you got your online one up before anyone else.
Yeah, sometimes games go easy for you, don't they? But sometimes it's even worse when there's hardly any scores and you have to make up 600 words. So there was no shortage. There was no shortage of action, at all. I just thought it was probably one of the better Challenge Cup matches I have seen that Connacht have been competing all the time. They've competed in this cup, and I thought that both sides really contributed to an enthralling match. I mean, it was end-to-end stuff the entire time, and I think credit to both sides for the way that they played the match. And it's just, sort of sometimes the kick of the ball, isn't it? And Connacht prevailed, and I thought it was a really good display from Connacht.
Oh, it certainly was, and Pete, known as Banham in our Discord channel. Pete, you were in amongst all the fans. You made a lot of noise last night, and Pete, as we'll hear now, Pete Wilkins will reference you guys in the post-match press conference, but must have been fun to be in the middle of all that.
Yes, Alan, today I can just say je suis très content. Very, very up and down game. First half, we started really well. A lot of good vibes there, good buzz, crowd were getting great. Fell into that period in the middle where I think everyone just went, here we go. And you could sense there was, on the pitch, it had kind of slowed down and the fans were getting a bit edgy. And then I suppose suddenly a bit of momentum change, and I think just the crowd said, right, this is it, this is the chance. And it came up and everyone just started kicking on and roaring and shouting, and the buzz came back. And I think it did definitely have an effect because everyone felt the buzz, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, from one Pete to another. Here's William talking to Pete Wilkins last night, followed by his chat with Jack Carty.
For the first time in about, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, there's a bit of calm. We're sitting in the press room here at the Stade Hamidou. That was some performance by Connacht. It's historic wins. The first time they've ever won a single knockout game type in Europe. They have won here before in when they used to play aggregate score games. So that is historic. But that performance was exceptional.
It really was. The pride I'm feeling of the lads, I think, for what they delivered this evening in terms of that performance and obviously the result on the back of it, but for the way they've applied themselves over the last few weeks and months. We haven't always possibly had the luck that we deserved. We haven't always played well enough to get the wins on nights where we possibly could have done. But I think they've stuck at it. They've worked unbelievably hard, and at no stage has the self-belief wavered. And I think what we saw today was enormous self-belief, huge amount of energy and physicality, and then some really, really good rugby on top of that. So I'm just delighted for the players.
It was perhaps the game
we expected. It was a bit of a shootout type game. Both sides were really going for it. Connacht started on the front foot and got into the lead, and it was over and back, and there was 2 tries that were almost identical when the ball is dropped and hacked off down the field. But there was a tightness, and the Connacht bench, when they came on as well, tightened it up. But talk to me about the likes of Bundyaki, Dave Heffernan. I don't want to just reel off all sorts of players, but Dave Heffernan's performance today was outstanding. Bundyaki brought an exuberance to it and a physicality, but also he seemed to drag other people with him. And that's what world-class players do. He's the best 12 in the world, so that's what they do. They just have that something a little different.
They do, and I was just chatting to Bundy on pitch there before, after the final whistle, before we came indoors, and talking about the impact he made, and as you said, there were some unbelievably dominant carries and really important moments in defence. It sets a standard, it lifts the players around him, it gives them enormous energy, but he was also very aware of the impact he needed to have in terms of calming the group at times. So when things didn't go well, or how he would back up a positive moment, his ability to encourage the players around him to stay present and regroup and connect and get back on and ready for the next task, I think was just as important. So, you get the spikes and those real positive moments in the game from him, but I think that ability to recognise when the group does need to reset and clear their heads a bit, I think he brought enormous calm and control, and he's done that in the toughest arenas of world rugby. So our players only benefit from having him in the ranks doing that. And as you said, Dave Heffernan was terrific. It was difficult to take him off the field last week in Treviso. You're looking, particularly with front rowers, you're looking to see at what point does their energy or their physicality drop, and it really didn't last week in Treviso. And poor old Owen de Butler got sort of 5 to 10 minutes there at the end. Tonight we just couldn't take Dave off, and he was almost getting stronger as the second half went on. So it's testament to his performance, but also the way he prepares himself on the back of last week as well.
And does some of what Finlay and Bundy bring is simply confidence that the other players, as you say, can feed off? They can, can they smell it or something? It's just their players are in the right place, and they go, we're good enough now because I've seen him do that and I can do that. I thought David Hawkshaw was magnificent tonight because he looked a 13 tonight. Because he's got a 12 inside him. Who's the best? As I'm going to say, he's the best in the world, and that just gives you confidence, and you know how you want to play.
Yeah, it does. I think it gives us that guidance on the field. It gives us reference points in terms of when they carry hard and make a dent in the opposition line. It gives us a focal point as to how to build that next phase of attack. I think that material impact is huge, and as we said, their presence in the group, it does give the boys confidence, and it's not just their experience and what they bring from their international rugby, but their personalities and that sheer force of will, and it's infectious. It is infectious in a group, and I think that's crucial anytime you win a knockout game, but particularly away from home, particularly in France. You need those characters that are going to be first out over the top of the trench, and everyone else follows.
Talking about characters, the Connacht fans tonight were they were down in front of us, which was great. They were making a racket. The local band was making a racket. But they, at one stage, I thought Connacht lifted. I really could see it. I thought, they've lifted them. Joe Joyce got up, played. Did he play the whole game, just about? And you're thinking, he's gone. But 70 minutes, tackle, bang, and you're thinking, they were being driven on tonight. Is that the sort of performance you've been waiting for, maybe all season? Maybe the Munster game at home was similar. Maybe Munster were stronger than Poe, but it was the same. We're not given an inch here.
No, look, I think in terms of the supporters, their impact was unbelievable. And there was a stage there, I think, sort of early in the second half where we started to reassert ourselves, having drifted off a little bit leading into half-time. And there was a lull in the game, and the supporters stood up and, singing the Fields of Athen Rye and hands in the air, and to see the size of the presence in the crowd, but the sheer energy that was coming from them, it lifted me in the coach's box. So how it felt to the players, I can only imagine. It's crucial, and for us to represent them in that way, it adds to the pride that I'm feeling at the moment. I think in terms of the player's character and that type of performance, I've always known that character's in there, and there's never been a doubt, either individually or collectively. I think the two things we've been working on is greater consistency, one in terms of just our rugby execution, to making sure that we don't let teams off the hook with errors or inconsistencies in that sense. but also that consistency of mindset of knowing that when we're in the fight, we can double down and hang in there, and we might have some negative moments, we might ship some points, something might go wrong, but we can regroup really quickly and go again. So the character's always been there, but I just think sometimes there's been pressure releases on the back of either the rugby piece or us just not staying consistent with that application. So, today I was a little bit worried going in at half-time just in terms of that momentum that Poe had. But I felt we had the solutions in the room, and I felt as long as we messaged that right and the players understood that, we were right in the fight. And I think the way we closed that gap on the scoreboard and then accelerated away, was a really fair representation of that.
Most points Connacht have scored all season. Rate that as just as a performance around this season, or maybe even last season. It's really well up there, because this is a pretty hostile place to come. Although the crowd were generous enough at the end, well, the ones who didn't go home early or leave, but I think there was just an acceptance that Connacht were at this today. But 40 points is a lot of points to get moving in a knockout game.
No, it is, and we predicted a fairly tight affair, I suppose, in terms of. We knew Poe would be a team that could be very disciplined in possession and build a lot of phases. We might have to spend a long time defending. We knew that we needed to do the same when we got opportunity. We felt there'd be some long kicking and a bit of back and forth. That's, Poe have got that side to their game as well, and we knew we needed to hang in there. So there were different elements. We thought it could be really tight, but at the same time, both teams like to attack. And I think, as much as the scorelines were likely to be tight, I think there's always going to be some excitement in there, and it didn't disappoint. I think the performance has to be up there as one of our best of the season. I think not necessarily because it was the perfect 80 minutes. As I said, certainly that second quarter, Poe really got a foothold in the game and got some pretty effective momentum, which fed the crowd as well. But I think when you account for how we responded to that coming out after half-time, in terms of mindset and in terms of the rugby we played, it almost doubles the satisfaction. As much as we'd one day like to see the perfect game, we probably won't get that far. But when you see a response within a game after a really good start, a little bit of a lull, and then to come back and I suppose put the hammer down, I think that it just says a lot about the group and the potential of the group as well. We want to keep getting better.
You've nearly answered my next question. I was going to say, does the perfect 80 minutes exist? Or does a coach go, no, it was 96.2% this week, lads, but it wasn't the perfect performance?
Okay, well, it probably, I think there's potential for it. I think we have to keep chasing it. Whether we see it, I don't know. But look, I think part of those speed bumps or little dips in games or seasons and disappointments, you measure yourself within that moment, but then you also measure yourself again in terms of how you respond. And we don't just want to be a team that responds and gets back to where we were. We want to be a team that grows and learns something from defeat or from difficult moments in games and comes back stronger and bigger and better. And we talked about that before the game with the players at the hotel, and I thought they really embodied that today. I was immensely proud.
Looking ahead to next week, it's Benetton. Benetton did a bit of a number on Connacht last week. I think they were a bit lucky, but they won the game. So does that feature in how you build up for it? And when do you park this one? Because there's a buzz from this that must drive in to the next few days. It's not long, but when do you actually say, right, that's over, now we have to focus on our next job? And the next job is an away game in Benetton. But the prize is huge. It's a semi-final. You went to a semi-final last year in the URC. Semi-final in the Challenge Cup would be damn nice.
It would be. It's a great carrot at the end of it. I think for us, we probably never really separate the game before with the game coming up, in the sense that we'll have a clear idea of what we need to do better against Benetton, how we need to play the game. But at the same time, the importance of this Poe game, obviously the result and the performance, but there'll be bits of that performance that we can use as either ideas or motivation or clarity in terms of how we need to play next week. So for us, on a Monday, normally it'll be Tuesday this coming week. It's not a review and then park it and then start to preview the next day. They're often quite joined up, and there might be some clips of Benetton, some clips of Poe, some clips of training, and we try and just build a picture of the journey that we're on and trying to improve as a team. So as coaches, we've already met to discuss Benetton. We met this morning, and it wasn't any sign of us taking Poe for granted, but we knew we needed to be prepared should we win, and hopefully we were going to win. So we've already met to dissect what we learnt and how we might approach that Benetton game differently. We spent a long time discussing, if we were the Benetton coaches, what would they have learnt from playing Connacht last week, and how might they approach it differently or see opportunities. So this Poe game, will help focus our thoughts in terms of some of those aspects of the game, and we'll present that back to the players, congratulate them, but we need to get our heads around the next challenge pretty quickly. But we're doing so with enormous satisfaction and even greater motivation than this time last week.
Well done, Pete. That was absolutely superb. We've booked our flights. We're going to Treviso. Lindley, have you a couple of questions?
Just very briefly, if you were to take out one aspect of that game that you believe was the most important factor in that victory, what would it be?
I think at the start of the second half and throughout the second half, I think we were more aggressive defensively. And I don't mean in terms of the physical contacts. I thought we were brave in that throughout, but I thought we attacked Poe rather than standing off and worrying about what they might do. And I think the Shane Bolton try is probably a really good example where if we're positive with our line speed and positive with our decision making in defence, you can force errors out of the opposition. And as much as it'll go down as points scored for us, it's come from Scott Fardy's work and the players' work in terms of that defensive aggression. And I think that was crucial, because what we couldn't have done was continue that cycle of not having enough possession, not having enough territory, and just trying to problem solve, which was a bit how our Lyon game went. And I actually said to the coaches at half time, it's starting to feel a little bit like Lyon in terms of us solving and solving and solving, but eventually against good French teams and some pretty big outside backs, you run out of energy and the scoreline can get away from you. So I think that positivity and aggression in defence will be crucial for us, not just next week, but for us through the rest of the season. I think we've seen a glimpse of what we can do there, and that'll be crucial.
Is that the best you've seen this team play this season?
Overall, yes. I don't think because it was the perfect 80 minutes, but as I said, because of the response to that second quarter, in a rugby sense, but also a mindset sense, I thought that was really impressive.
Jack, what's it like in the dressing room after a performance like that, a win like that, and what it sets up for you?
Yeah, we're obviously elated. We've had a couple of, I suppose, tight losses, 3 actually this year. So I think for us to come out on the other end of it with a win, and in terms of the circumstances, everyone's just delighted. But yeah, we're feet in the ground and looking forward to next week again.
But you have to celebrate this in spirit. You have to celebrate it as well for what the achievement is. And as Pete said, then at some stage you have to move on to Benetton. But you played them last week, so they're not. You're going to have a fair idea what they are up to.
Yeah, I think we'll enjoy it today or this evening. Again, any game we've played in Italy the last couple of years has always kind of came down to them kind of last 10-15 minutes, similar to what it was last week, similar to what it was this evening. So when you get to these kind of knockout games, it's all about kind of, I suppose, being brave. And I think you kind of saw with how we finished the game there, or how we even played throughout that game. It was definitely a mindset in terms of braveness and in terms of how we played. And it still wasn't perfect yet. We always found our way to get back into the game when we were down by a couple of points.
It was a very open game at times, and 70 points were scored, but there was a hard edge to it as well. And Connacht's determination, it just seemed to be a little bit up from maybe what we've seen recently. And I think the pressure you put on was immense. And when you put pressure on, you get mistakes. And when you get mistakes, you can capitalise. And that seemed to be the mindset from minute 1 from Connacht.
Yeah, I think certainly in maybe the first 40 we were a bit... we obviously were aware of their threats in their backline in terms of how dangerous they were in open field, so we probably respected them too much in that and gave them too much space, and we're probably trying to contain them as opposed to going after them. And I think you saw from the Bolts try, from what we spoke about at half time in terms of putting more pressure on them with our line speed to keep going, and we got paid for it straight away. So there definitely was a mindset shift. When we came out at half time, it was more about being aggressive and not to try contain them.
And you're talking about not containing and getting on the front foot. Is that, I'm not going to say it's easy, but is it slightly different mindset in a knockout game to maybe than in an ordinary league game? Does the knockout mean it's flashing a little bit more that, at some stage you're going to have to up the wick a bit here?
I know. I think it's probably just a collective mindset. There's some games where you obviously are wary of the teams in terms of, like you speak about the Lions when we played them. They have these outside threats, and I think the change from us at halftime where we decided, we're going to play on our terms as opposed to trying to play on theirs. I think that's what you saw. But there's lots of different things in that. It's about timing the tackle. There's about our forward spacing between 10 and 40, so that gives the backs the confidence to go after them. So it's not just saying, let's be brave and going out in ones and twos. There's a massive thing that starts from our collisions, being connected in terms of going after them. And I think that was the probably collective thing. It was, Fards has spoken about that he was in different finals throughout his careers, and he may have had regrets at times, and you're never going to regret being brave and going after teams. And I think that's what we looked at halftime, and we then paid out for us.
It's a 23-man effort, but Bundyaki coming back, his decision making, maybe it's his aura. There was, he creates space for other people, but what is it like to have him outside you when it's really hard yards out there and it's just full on pressure, and his experience? How does that play in to what you're doing, and how do you think it plays in to somebody like maybe David Hawkshaw, who's still learning the role at 13 and is quite a young player?
I think what you kind of nailed it there in terms of his experience. In terms of, I suppose, for me as captain, when he kind of comes in, he takes pressure off me in terms of how he sees the game, in terms of what he speaks about in defence and attack. He's a second pair of eyes. Obviously, he's a ball carrying threat and a carrying threat. He likes to think he's a kicking threat as well. So he's a triple threat or double threat. I'm not too sure. But what he does is he creates space for the players around him, and then he gets one-on-ones. He's going to get you go forward ball, and then I suppose for opposition, there's such an awareness of him as well and what he brings. So it was great to have him back. In terms of what he added to the group, a bit of calmness, but also then how effectively he talks to the group and kind of settles everyone. It's a massive help for me.
Jack, where does that rate, in your opinion, on all the games and the teams you've played against? It's been a long time, probably since. Yeah,
it's up there. It's. I won't say it was the best or that, but I think for this team, it's certainly it's definitely in the top 5. I'd say in terms of. I suppose this year we've had many close losses, and I think if it would have happened there again today, I think it would have been pretty decimating for our season in terms of confidence and stuff like that. So the fact that we got the rub of the green this time, it doesn't happen. It comes from the things that we've done the last couple of weeks. I'd say it's up there. But again, I kind of take every game that comes. I'm not going to say it's the best. I'm not going to say it's the worst, but. Hopefully we can make a few more memories like that.
Yeah, I suppose you could go back obviously to Pac-Man's time to go 12 trophies, but in the last several years you haven't quite reached those heights.
No, I suppose the last time I think we won in France in a big game was Bordeaux away, 2019 or 2018 away from home, where we had to win. And I think what it does for our confidence, I suppose, in knockout games. It would have been heavily spoken about probably last year that we hadn't won knockout games, and I think we've kind of got rid of that monkey off our back, and now it's about kind of growing. And it's not about winning one knockout game. It's about going on and kind of winning a few. And I think certainly one of the learnings for me last year after we played the Ulster game and won there, maybe we celebrated that too much internally in the group. There was a massive lift of emotion after it. And I think what I saw in the change room after, obviously people were delighted, but there's an awareness there's a lot more to come, so it's good to see.
The team is growing up.
I think it's more of an understanding that there's so much more from us. I think last year, I suppose, with the Ulster game, there was this massive pressure release when we won that, because we'd had so many kind of quarterfinals or different things throughout the years since 2016. I think after winning that there today, there's definitely I could feel it in the change room. There's players are delighted, but there's definitely a lot more. I think that they want more. So please God, now we can drive on next week.
Yes, that was quite a relieved Pete Wilkins and a very philosophical Jack Carty there at the end too. I thought the the answer he gave to Linley's question about, you know, where they got the self-belief from, and Scott Fardy talking about, you know, not regretting, leaving no regrets behind. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, that was fascinating. The other fascinating thing he said was we over-celebrated last year when we beat Ulster. And I think the point he was making about that was that they were very calm, and we saw a few of the players later on, and they were having a little wander around. But I think, yeah, they know that that was only a round of 16 game, Alan. You've won nothing, you've qualified you're into another knockout game now. But that was, I think, the point Jack was making. Pete was correct, it wasn't a perfect performance, but then he sort of answered that by saying maybe there's no such thing, and he sort of rolled on to that himself. Coaches they'll never be 100% happy.
No.
But there was a good buzz. I did think, as I said in the live commentary on Galway Bay, I asked Dave Heffernan, just in passing when we were at the captain's run, I said, are you good to go? It's the sort of stuff you ask all the time. And he didn't sort of answer me, he just gave me a look and nodded, and then we moved on to some other topics. But it was like, yeah, we're here and we mean business. And he played like a man who meant business from minute 1 to minute 80.
He certainly did, Linley, wasn't he? I thought Dave Heffernan was, you know, it was very hard to pick out any single player, but I have to say I did reference him 3 or 4 times because the aggression and the power and the accuracy of his play right throughout was just tremendous, and it's what we're always looking for from Connacht as fans and as people who follow them. We want them to be hard-working but play with accuracy as well.
Yeah, I thought Dave Heffernan was exceptional. It was great to see because, you know, it has been sort of an up and down sort of season for him and a couple of seasons, but last night he shone. He really did. He took on a responsibility. He took on a leadership role. He was involved in absolutely everything on the pitch. And, you know, that sort of leadership, he's very experienced. That sort of leadership was needed because, you know, particularly in the pack, it brings everyone with him and as a pack all together operating at that level. And I thought there were more than, you know, there were many leaders on the pitch. In fact, and, you know, there were so many leaders on that pitch. And I think that was something quite we haven't seen for a while.
Yes,
where everyone basically stood up. So whatever Pete Wilkins said in his pre-match speech obviously worked. The thing about it now is that, you know, as you say, they have to now go and do it again. So this is another level again. Yep. So there will be some very tired bodies. I'm sure they need to take a good rest, and you know, I think. But that will give them huge confidence because it has been a pretty up and down season.
It has.
And there has been some disappointments that, you know, possibly we didn't expect. So I think, you know, that it will give them a huge lift, and who knows what happens next week. Yeah, Niall, like you're looking at the influence that Bundy and Finlay seem to have, bringing back players of that quality really brought everybody else in the team up a level or two, because that was as good a performance as I've seen us all season.
Yeah, that's true. But like, you're bringing one of the best players of the world back here. Your performance better get good, and Finlay's one of the best tight heads out there at the minute. But it seemed to galvanise a couple more players as well. Dave Heffernan played his best game in a while, I think. But they need to kick on now because I don't believe Connacht have been playing well for the last good while, and
since the Munster game.
Yeah, absolutely. And they look like a team that's really short on confidence. So if they can crack on from here now, you know, there might be a bit of a season to salvage.
Yeah, it certainly looks like that, William. When you're looking at even young players like Shane Jennings in his first start, he looked to the manner born.
Yeah, he played with a lot of confidence, and he, apart from maybe one little error somewhere along the way, he was very impressive. Look, this is nicely set up for them. They're obviously going back to Treviso, where they lost 2 weeks ago. That'll be an interesting challenge for both sides. They also went to a European knockout game there last year, and they were awful.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to happen this time.
No.
And then they've got the 2 easiest games in the URC coming. You cannot play a worse team at home than Zebre, who are bottom of the table, and then you get to go away to the team who are second bottom. So it gets harder after that, but their concentration, they know what they have to do. If they bring that sort of intensity next week, I don't think Treviso will handle that. I think Connacht should have beaten them 2 weeks ago when they were fully loaded. They could put out a side that's exactly the same,
Well, they can't quite because Nick Otero got sent off yesterday. And he's a very important player for those guys.
He is, and they also might have to rest a few people for their run-in in the URC. There's a lot of pressure. They want an Italian side in the top 8, I would say.
Yep.
URC want it, but I'd say the Italian Federation want it even more. And Zebre aren't getting there. So it's an interesting one. It is a funny one. They lost to the Lions, and then they lost to Benetton, and then Benetton beat the Lions on Saturday night, maybe a bit tighter than we thought it would be, and then Connacht won today. So that these teams are all sort of linked, and I'll be asking about that during the week. How do you get ready? You can analyse them, but it's more of a mental thing, I think, to play them, because Connacht won't change a lot, and neither will Benetton.
No, they won't. Lindley, you believe what do we do now? Do we focus on getting into the top 8, or do we focus on getting into a semi-final? Because even if we win in Benetton, it's an away semi-final to either the Ospreys or Gloucester.
I think we fight on both fronts. I think it's the only thing you can do. That's what they're about. That's what they're there for. I don't think you just give up one for another, because you just don't know how that's going to play out. So no, and it's like success breeds success, and good games bring more games and better games, and the level rises all the time, and that's where they have to maintain. So there's no point in going out thinking, oh look, we're going to give up one match to put all our eggs in one basket. That just doesn't work.
Oh, excellent answer, Lindley. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Right, the only thing we have to worry about, I think, from last night was the fact that Shane Bolton, in scoring that spectacular try in the start of the second half, looked as though he ripped a hamstring. We haven't heard anything yet. We'll find out. I think it's Wednesday. Everything has been...
Well, we'll see him today at the airport, Alan.
Oh, of course we'll see him at the airport.
So
yes,
we might be able to judge. He did look in a lot of bother. I would say we won't be seeing him next week. I'm not sure about the situation with Jared Butler. He went off for a HIA. I don't know what issues happened around that. And there might be a few more players, but I reckon they'll patch up and get at it, because they've got to look. I've just said it about the URC games. They then they win those two. Just play ahead. They win the 2 URC games. The key game then is going to actually be the next home game. The final home game is the Stormers. Munster, well, we'll see. Leinster, but I think
they're out of Europe, so they're going to be fully locked and loaded for us, because they'll definitely want to try and get
unless they've got sore tummies again or whatever other reasons. Yes, they will, and that might be a very big hill to climb. But if Connacht had harder, to me, if you can't beat Zebre and you can't beat the Dragons, then you don't deserve to be in the top 8.
I agree,
and that's why it's set up for them to pick around that. Tom Farrell, who we haven't seen for ages, came on and played well. And I thought Caelan Blade, without the captaincy role for a big chunk of the game, looked getting back to his best. It's fascinating. It's really interesting. It's a different place to go again. I'm sure there'll be lots of Connacht fans there. I booked tickets last night for us to go, and the price was going up at a rate of knots, because the seats were disappearing, because everybody went, okay, I'll fly in Sunday, fly home Monday, and that's what we're at.
Yep, yeah, absolutely.
And there'll be a fast taxi involved.
I hope so.
Which could be fun in Italy.
Well, as long as the flight's on time, because the flight wasn't on time this week.
Well, if the flight's not on time, the taxi will be even faster, Alan. I'll just sit up the front, and whatever the Italian for alle is, I'll be encouraging. Right. Maybe I'll take out some money and just wave a bit more money under it and say, we have to get there. We will get there.
We will.
And it's going to be another hot 24 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. Put me shorts on. Rugby in this weather, I like it.
That's what you want, and hopefully the pitch will be not as heavy as Pete mentioned about playing on heavy pitches earlier in the week, that it'll have dried out and we'll have a good solid pitch, and Connacht will play on another grass pitch.
Yeah, unless they water it. But just to protect it from the sun, don't you know, that can happen.
It can indeed.
But we'll see. But look, it's great. It's nice to be in Europe. Lovely city here. Yeah. Town, I'm not sure what it is. Beautiful place. And great people. Fabulous. Helpful people. And shout out to Francois Redon, the media manager for Section Paulois And they have another 2 words in the title as well. The most helpful media person that I've ever dealt with outside of Ireland. Couldn't do enough for us and sorted us out, looked after us, and I think just was, I wouldn't say he was delighted at Connacht won, but he wasn't remotely bothered in terms of it had gone well for us. And I will be contacting him to say thank you, because he really made our life so much easier.
He certainly did. Okay, this is we're going to cut it short here because we're standing in the sun. I want to get a bit more sunshine, a bit more vitamin D before I get home. We will have podcasts, but they're all going to be slightly later this week because of the travel today, and Connacht they actually train until Wednesday, so we'll have a break tomorrow, but then we'll have their midweek podcast. We'll have Pete and whoever else gets thrown up to us. We'll have the captain's run as well at some point later in the week, and we'll be back live again next week. So it's all go in this podcast. So if you want to support us, patreon.com/CraggyRugby. It's a $5 a month. I think we give relatively good value, William. I think we do okay.
I think we do for a $5 a month. It would barely buy you a bun here now. It's got a little bit more expensive in France. I wouldn't buy you a bun at home either. Look, if you're a Patreon listening to this, remember, enter our quiz.
Absolutely.
Good prizes, and listen out for the exclusive podcast that you get, or better still, join up and then you'll get everything.
Yeah, and a big thank you to the folks who are joining up and supporting us and allowing us to get and do all these matches and bring everything we can about Connacht Rugby to you guys. Okay, we'll leave it there, folks. And yes, Lindsay's just prompted me. Au revoir. Au revoir.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out or nothing changes. Side